All right, perfect. So we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is John Peterson. Some people call me a life coach, mindset coach. I basically help people with mental breakthrough. That's the biggest thing. And so today we had the advertisement that they put out was effective planning, creative solutions, and take action mindset. And as I was planning for this today, I was just coming up with your normal 5 steps to be successful at lead generation, 3 steps to be successful at mindset. And as I kind of started thinking about it, I was like, you guys already know that, right? And if you don't, there's Google and there's YouTube. What I specialize in is why are you not doing what you know you need to do? So today we're going to have a group session. I meet with people one-on-one. They hire me to do this. And so we're going to go through having a session, the questions I would ask the agents or people that I'm coaching, because at the end of the day, there's something that you're believing about yourself that is the reason why you're not taking action. I'll put it up here in a little bit. In fact, it might be next. There it is. Pretty much been in real estate my whole life. Started helping people with mindset. It really boils down to what you believe about yourself. There's books on how to be a luxury agent. There's books on how to make $500,000. There's books on how to be a millionaire. So the steps are there. Why aren't you doing it? And so I try not to go too deep because we will talk about some stuff that I want you to go back and you'll be asking yourself a lot of questions today. As a coach, one of the things that I love doing is asking you questions. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I mean, we're all adults. You all know what to do. But I'm going to ask you a lot of questions just because I want you to uncover for yourself, right? And everyone's going to have a different answer. And so I'm just going to ask you to be real with yourself. I'm not going to call on anyone. I'm not going to embarrass anyone. Now, if you want to volunteer and you want help or you have a question, go for it. My speaking is very open. We're not going to wait till the end for a Q&A. I like to do it kind of as we're going along, right? So if you're courageous enough and you're like, hey, I'm dealing with this, I need some help, what would you recommend? Whether it's something internal, something you believe in, or just lead generation or whatever, like just pop up your hand and ask me. Because here's what I've realized after speaking for so many years, usually the question that you have, 2 or 3 other people have that same question. They're just a little afraid to raise their hand. One of the things that we're going to go through today that we'll start with is the DISC profile. How many are familiar with the DISC profile? A few. Okay, perfect. Well, good. I'm glad we're talking about it. I'm going to sit down so you guys can see the slide. So the DISC profile, there's a D, I, S, and C, right? That's where they come up with DISC. This is a personality profile. The reason why I want to cover this today is because this is going to help you when you deal with people. These are the 4 major groups of personalities. So let's start with the D, dominance. This person is very direct. All they care about is results. They're very firm, they're strong-willed, they're forceful. So as we're going through these, not only do I want to explain this to you as far as helping you talk and deal with your clients, but also some self-discovery today. Like you're going to figure out what you are. Oh, that's why I think like that. Oh, that's why I respond like that. So again, the D is very direct. When I learned these, it actually helped me because the book or the guy that was teaching actually put animals to it, right? So the D, the dominance, if you're taking notes, it's a bull. Think about a bull, right? Not very friendly, will hurt you if you're not careful, right? And they pretty much do what they want to do. They're big, they're strong. So what does a D look like when you're doing an open house or if you're in sales? The D does not want to be sold. The D wants to remain in charge, in control. So the D is a type of person that if you have an open house and let's just say the entryway, the front door is where you can see it from the kitchen. The D is they walk in and you greet them, hey, how you doing? Welcome to the, hey, how, and they'll just dart off to the right or to the left. They don't want to talk to you. And what I realized from my divorce is you can't make anybody do anything, right? All I can control is my actions and my attitudes. Now, if they come in, kind of blow me off, we call it the Heisman, right? They gave you the stiff arm. If they do that to you and go off, you can go follow them. You're just going to piss them off. They don't want to talk to you. Again, going back to what we can control, they want to be in control. They don't want to be sold. They're just here to look at the house. So when they're like that, this is what I do because I know I'm dealing with a D. The D will come to you when they have questions. Now, if you're doing sales, like regular sales outside of real estate, because you can't really do it on the house. Now, I guess you could. You could just say, hey, as they walk in, you greet them and they just boom, go to the right. Just say, hey, just want to let you know we have, the seller's offering contribution or a rebate, or it's a little hook to be like the whole time they're walking through the house, they're going to be like, what is that rebate? What is that concession they're offering? Then when they're ready, right, don't chase them. When they come to you, wherever you're standing in the kitchen, then it's like, what's that rebate you were telling me about? Now they want to talk to you. You have to wait till that point or you're going to lose them. I remember one time I was buying my wife a car. I was married at the time. And so we were at the Lexus dealership. And the salesman came out, nice young guy. Hey, how's it going? This, that, whatever, super talkative. And I'm like, hey, we want to look at this model here. And so he's like, yeah. So I'm walking to it. I said, are they open? Oh, yeah, they're all unlocked. Okay, great. So I start walking over to open it. He jumps in front of me to open the door. Oh, here you go. And like irritated. I'm just like, okay. So did that a couple times with some different cars. I'm super irritated. My wife at the time was not a D. I'm irritated. I'm not showing it. I'm not being a jerk. But I just said, hey, would you do me a favor, man? I said, do you have a business card? And he's like confused. He's all, yeah. I said, I just want to take our time. I want to look at the cars. And if I need you, I'll come get you. Oh, okay. Sure. He was confused, right? But again, I was irritated. I was not having a good experience. And if he didn't stop, I was going to leave. So that's what happens with the D, right? Let's talk about the I, the influencer. So the influencer is outgoing, enthusiastic, optimistic, high-spirited, lively. The animal that goes with influence is Tigger. Remember from Winnie the Pooh? Super excited, probably ADHD, squirrel. Yeah, exactly, right? Life of the party. People are like, oh my God, you'd love to talk. You're a people person. You need to be in sales. You need to be a closer is what you need to be in sales, right? Helps that you're a talker, but you have to be careful because if you're not careful, I used to be with Keller Williams. I was a director, and so I had 29 agents that I was coaching, right? And for the longest time, Keller Williams felt that you had to be a D or an I, more on the D side, to be a good team lead. Later, they've revamped and said, like, you need every person on your team. You need a D, you need an I, you need an S, and you need a C, right? A C can be a team leader, but they always thought it had to be the D, like just direct, to the point, and whatever, right? And if you're not careful, me being a D, being conscious of that, I have to be careful the way I talk to an S. And we'll get into an S here in a minute. Because if I'm too direct, they're going to take it as I'm mean, as I'm rude, not being mean or rude. Because if I talk to another D, they're going to get it. In fact, they're going to appreciate it. To the point, direct, don't waste my time, let's go. So the influencer, Tigger the tiger, is just kind of all over the place. Super happy to be there, super talkative. They'll talk your ear off. You plan an hour for lunch, and 2.5 hours, you're still there with them. And so again, that's the type of person that you're talking to. So their attention span is not very long. So you just have to be aware of that. Again, the I, you can be a little direct with them, but not as much as the S. So that's kind of the influencer. So let's jump over to the S. So steadiness. Steadiness is even-tempered, accommodating, patient, humble, tactful. The animal next to steadiness is a lamb. It's kind of humble. Usually when you see someone, if you're working in a model home or doing an open house and someone comes in or a client that you're talking to, the image that I always get based on this and the research I've done on it is almost like a picture of like a grandma. Right? She's about 5 foot, comes in, has her purse under her thing, just very quiet. The kids or whoever's looking at the house, and she's just quiet, just behind them, not really saying anything. That is steadiness. That is the S. They don't want to cause waves. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of times they feel they're not worthy with helping people, right? With what I do, going internal and what you believe in, all that stuff. They don't feel they're worth this $1 million house. They have a very hard time justifying and purchasing $1 million house or an expensive house, whatever their budget is, because they don't feel they're worth it. So again, someone like that, the way I spoke to another D, I'm not going to talk to an S like that. They will for sure think I'm rude, I'm a jerk, because it's just, you're going to turn them off. Now, one is not better than the other, right? As humans, we always want to be competitive and we're always stacking who's number one, who's number. These are just different. One is not better than the other. So if you happen to be an S, it doesn't mean you're the low man on the totem pole or you're the least, valuable or anything like that. It's just so you know how to understand and work with people. So let's do the C. Conscientious, analytical, reserved, precise, private, systematic. The C's, the animal that was next to C is an owl. And here's what's very interesting about the owl. The owls are usually accountants. Right? If an owl or a C comes in to your open house, they're going to want a list of pros and cons. They love data. What's the SEER rating on that HVAC system? I don't know. Right? How old is the roof? They want data. So if you have that, right, already for your open house, like that's amazing. Here's another thing that's interesting about the owls. Is there's actually the way they stand. And it's true. Like now that you've learned this and you start dealing with an owl next time or a C, when you're talking to them, they usually sit like this or stand like this. They're not being rude, right? So body language, a lot of people think this is being rude. I'm cut off. No, it's an owl. The other one is like this. as you're talking to them. And a lot of times they'll walk in with a pad and paper. That's the person that's going to be taking notes, is your C, right? Accountants, attention to detail. They want to know, like I said, the SEER rating. They want to know all that kind of stuff. And so be ready for them, right? And if you don't know the answer, don't BS them, guys. Because here's the thing, they know when you're BSing them. Just say, you know what, that's a great question. I don't know, or how would you like me to get back with you, right? We're assuming you're at an open house. Because here's what I've realized too with open houses. I've been doing real estate my whole life. If I ask for your phone number, but you're not comfortable enough to give me your phone number, you'll say, like, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. You may have been comfortable giving me your email. So that's why I'll ask, what's the best way to get a hold of you? It's weird. Now with social media, sometimes it'll be Instagram. Yes, sir. Yeah, what's that saying? Birds of a feather flock together, right? C's are going to hang out with C's. S's are going to hang out with S's. But if you're in sales, you're going to encounter the other three personalities. So that's why I'm kind of talking about this. A lot of people don't. So when I'm doing one-on-one sessions, we go over this and people are like, I've never heard of this. I'm like, really? They've never heard of Myers-Briggs. They've never heard of some of this other stuff, right? You know what I'm talking about? And so again, I went on my journey, right? I mentioned my divorce earlier, and it was just really, really bad. And so going through my divorce, I just went on this journey of self-discovery. Didn't really date anyone, just started researching me. And that's what I want to talk about today is you, right? Most classes are not about this. Most classes are about, oh, best 3 ways to lead generate, this, and this. And best this and best that. And again, you guys can get that off of Google or YouTube. What I'm doing is literally just having a session with you is what I do with my clients is make you think. That's the best compliment I get whenever I'm done speaking is like, you made me think today. I'm like, good, because most of us don't. And I don't mean that as a negative, right? Most people are on autopilot. How many, like for example, how many were agents last year, all of 2023? Raise your hand. Okay, the majority, perfect. Have you guys ever thought of giving yourself a pat on the back that you made it through 2023? And I'm being serious. We lost almost 100,000 agents last year. Just think about that for a second. We lost almost 100,000. This is according to NAR. So they have the data. We lost almost 100,000. But most people aren't patting themselves on the back. Why? Because they don't take the time to think about it. So that's one of the things that we're going to do today that I have my clients that I'm coaching do is you're going to have, or I'm not going to say you're going to have, I would recommend, and we're going to go through it, having a CEO meeting with yourself once a week. You're going to ask yourself some questions. How did last week go? Did I hit my goals? Did I hit my plan? Problem is, most agents that I speak to don't even have a plan. They don't even know what they want. They just got into real estate because they heard that they could have the freedom of the schedule whenever they wanted. They're going to make $150,000 a year, right? No one told them they had to work. They just thought they're going to do a couple social media posts. Their friends through social media would just know they're an agent and their phone would just ring off the hook. So to me, the expectation that has been set for real estate is actually terrible. It's funny, when I was researching this, I guess because the algorithm, right? They find out what you search and all that stuff. So on YouTube, it was a couple months back. In fact, I think it was for Brad. Last time I spoke for Brad a couple months back, I was researching some stuff. And so I guess because of what I was searching, like the commercials on YouTube were popping up. So as I'm sitting there thinking about the expectation and all that, this advertisement popped up. I'm not going to say which company it was, but it was to help you get your license. And it was just like, do you want your own schedule? Work when you want. And all this, right? And one of the things that they're actually showing on the commercial is like a husband and wife riding bikes during the day. And I'm like, holy cow, like this is why the expectation is terrible. It's not like that. They don't tell you that you need to lead generate every day or multiple times a week. They don't tell you that you're going to be on the phone talking. Oh, John, I hate being on the phone. Then you probably should maybe look at another career. Or when I'm coaching someone, it's like, okay, these are the steps. These are things that need to be done for you to be successful. Well, I don't want to do this one and that one. Okay, well, they need to be done. So either you get an intern, you hire someone, but that part has to be done, right? But again, the expectation has been, oh, you just get your license, spend about $2,000, you're official, and all of a sudden people are just using you. Hasn't been my experience. And if you're not careful, you're going to be an agent that is always chasing leads, right? No, I used to be a recruiter for Monument. A coach and a recruiter over there, Monument up in Frisco. And I can't tell you how many agents I met there, and that was probably 2 years ago. Even in just 1 year, there was 2 agents that I know, both of them were on their 3rd or 4th broker, right? One of them now is, I think, on her 5th. Why? Because, ladies and gentlemen, no one will ever look in the mirror and say, I'm the problem. Oh, my broker did this. Oh, they said they were going to train me. Oh, and those may all be true, but it goes back to you having grit. Like, come hell or high water, I'm going to sell 24 houses this year. Come hell or high water, I'm going to be a luxury agent, right? And that's what part of that CEO meeting is with you, with yourself, is accountability. And asking yourself those tough questions and being real. That's why I don't want you guys to, unless you want to volunteer, I don't want you guys to say your answers, because I do want you to go deep and inside, and be real with yourself. So with that said, that's the first question I want to ask you guys. We're done with the DISC profile. Why, well, actually, let me back up. If you can write down, what is your goal for this year? And what was your goal for last year? And when I say goal, I'm not talking about losing weight or better marriage or relationship, strictly real estate. How many deals did you want to do last year? How many did you want to close? And be real with yourself. If you didn't have a plan, just write, I didn't have a plan. We'll talk about that. So what I would recommend after class, and the reason why I say after class is because if not, if you put, oh, I'll do it next week, it'll never happen. After class, go to Google and just type in DISC assessment free. And there's a test that you can take. And based on the questions, it'll tell you what your dominant one was or what your and it'll actually give you a scale. Like, it's kind of cool. It's kind of a graph. It'll say the D, maybe you're only 20%, the I, 80 or whatever. So you can kind of see what your top two are. I don't think it changes. You're still going to be, yeah, I think you're still going to be, let's say you were a high D, right? You're still going to be a high D, but you're going to use maybe the I and the S more for that role. So I think your role will kind of change. Yes, you'll still be a high D. Yep, you'll still be a high D, but you're using more of that. I'm not sure if you got here before or after I said this, but I used to be with Keller Williams, right? I was a director and a coach. And for the longest time, they felt you had to be a D to be a team lead, right? Years later, they said, no, anyone can be a team lead. But they always thought you had to be the D, you had to be tough, you had to be, right? So again, it just kind of depends, I think, on your role. Because you could be on a team and maybe be the TC, right? And so you're going to be more the C. Analytical, paperwork, make sure that you're compliant, all that kind of stuff, right? Where an I, if you're a high I, you're going to get frustrated in that role. That's not you, right? You're just all over the place. You're bubbly. You want to talk to everyone. Like, it's hard to just focus on something, like squirrel, all that kind of stuff. So again, I think it depends on the role. Good question though. So yeah, Google that, and any of you guys that want to do that as well, it'll help you figure out what you are. So the other thing I want you guys to write down is, what is your dominant thought you have about yourself concerning being an agent? Again, I'm not going to pick on anyone if someone wants to volunteer this information, but how do you see yourself as an agent? Like, do you hear thoughts of, there's no way you could be successful at real estate? Or are you like, yeah, my thought is I am going to be a mega agent. I'm going to be an icon agent. Like, what thoughts do you have about yourself? What thoughts do you have about yourself? Good, bad, indifference, just write them down. The reason why I'm having you guys write everything down is so you can reflect later on when you have the CEO meeting with yourself next week. We're going to do one today, but next week you can reflect back on these answers. It'll help you get direction, right? Because you could be sitting next to someone that doesn't have high self-esteem. They're not sure if they can make this happen, whereas you may be killing it. That's why coaching, I don't offer a program that's like, oh, you're with me for a year and it's cookie cutter and everything's online for you to me, coaching is so individual. So I can't, in my mind, I wouldn't feel right taking people's money, just saying, oh yeah, here's a cookie cutter program, like just go through it. Because we all face different things, right? Everybody done? Anybody still writing? Anybody still writing? Everybody done? Okay, perfect. So at this point, let's take a lunch break while food's here. It's nice and hot. So to put you on the spot, so she gave me a great compliment when she came up talking about her food. So will you share with the class what you kind of happened last time Brad had a class and I spoke?
Yeah. So last time I came, I was actually going through a lot. It was closer to the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I have another business. I do taxes and insurance. So I manage a team of women at my office, and then I'm married and have kids, and it all just kind of was piling up. And last year I was going through a lot. I did a lot of self-discovery, but I didn't realize I needed to until after the class that I came here. And actually the image that you put up about thoughts and how they're like very physical and you can stop them really helped me. And so when I walked out of here, it was almost like I was a completely different person.
I love that.
So
Thank you.
I am so grateful for that.
Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that. Appreciate it. So she just came up and shared that at the break, and it's a perfect segue because we're going to talk about thoughts next. So thank you for sharing that, putting you on the spot. So the thought that I had you guys write down, I want you to think about, where did that thought come from? Positive or negative? Just where did that thought come from? This is my personal opinion. This is what I believe. You can believe whatever you want. How many of you guys remember this cartoon from back in the day, Tom and Jerry, right? And so I personally really believe that that's where our thoughts come from. It's from that unseen realm, right? Some people call it the spiritual realm. That's where Wi-Fi, microwaves, all that kind of stuff, right? That affects this world. And so for me, anytime you have a thought, it's kind of like this, right? In the cartoon, anytime they were fighting, the mouse would do something and Tom's going to retaliate and the screen would freeze, right? And then these two would pop up. And the little angel's like, oh, forgive him. He didn't know what he was doing. The devil's like, smack him in the face with a frying pan. I truly believe it's like that. I truly believe that our thoughts, let me back up. I know that not every thought I have is my own. I love to cook. If I'm cooking and I'm like, oh, you know what? I need to put some paprika. That would make it taste better. I don't really think one of these two gave me the thought. Right? But have you ever realized, or maybe you haven't, and so I'm glad you're here to think about this, is to be aware, like, why do we wake up with negative thoughts? Why do we not wake up, or when we have an idea to do something amazing, why is not the next thought that comes is like, absolutely you can do that. You're a rock star. You need to go for it. Doesn't happen to me. I mean, maybe it happens to you, but usually it's fear, stress, anxiety, one of those, right? That comes to you is like, what? You sell 24 houses this year? Do you remember where you're from? Do you remember this? Do you remember that? Right? Starts bringing up your pat. Right? It's all negative. So to me, this is a great visual to help me. Is like, where did that thought come from? Because once you identify where that thought came from, that helps you whether you're going to receive that thought into your mind or if you're going to reject it. So this guy's a bouncer, right? He's at a swanky club. You can see the velvet rope behind him. What I did when I went through my divorce, and just so you guys understand, like, it was terrible. Like, she was cheating on me. I came home to an empty house. Like, she moved out. Had literally a Dear John letter. Didn't know where they were for a week. She wrote me a letter, said they were up in the mountains. She'll get back to me in a week, right? So everything's gone. Bank accounts wiped out. It was just terrible. First time in my life I started thinking about suicide. I never really thought about suicide before. Why was it at this point I'm thinking about suicide, right? So now you understand why this image means so much to me. Never, ever had I thought about suicide. But in that moment, I'm thinking about suicide. I'm thinking about doing drugs. I'm thinking about whatever, just to cope with that pain, right? To help that pain go away. So what I realized when I just, again, started doing some self-discovery, some work on myself, I always thought your mind and your brain were the same thing. They're not. This is where I realized your mind is your consciousness. It's from that unseen realm, right? If you were to pass away and they do an autopsy on you, they could cut you open and plop your brain on this table. You can't plop your mind on this table. The other thing I realized is that I can control my mind, right? So perfect example. All of you are physically sitting here, but some of you mentally are thinking about your 3 p.m. appointment. Some of you are thinking about the fight you had with your significant other. Some of you are thinking about how you're going to pay rent in a couple days. So you're here physically, but you're not here. I learned that when you're supposed to be focused on something and your mind starts coming off, I realized that I had the power to pick it up and say, no, speak to it. No, this is what I'm going to focus on. This is what I'm doing. Take every thought captive, exactly. And that's exactly right. I read a book where it said that, and I'm like, how do you do that? That's an option? Right? I didn't know you could do that. And so again, learning that principle. So what I did is I came up with a mental bouncer. That's what this guy represents. So I, for John Peterson, said, I need a mental bouncer because some of these thoughts are whack. I'm wanting to hurt people. I'm wanting to hurt myself. Where are these thoughts coming from, right? And then because here's what happens. If you're not careful and you're not like, oh, that thought is from something else, and you think it's your own, you start thinking like, you're a piece of crap. How could I think that? How could I, right? So you start me. Well, then once I realized, no, that wasn't my thought. And where did it come from? And like she said, I can capture that thought, right? So to me, I always use my phone because I have it with me. So as you're sitting dealing with whatever in life, not just real estate, just in life, guys, and this thought comes to you, right? You have to grab it, and basically your bouncer grabs it. So if you don't have a mental bouncer, I highly recommend you install one, because what will happen is that bouncer is going to protect your mind, right? Your mind's a playground. It's a field where you plant seeds, you plant ideas, you plant dreams. And so this bouncer is protecting that field, that playground. So what I did is the next slide shows what happens when I have a thought that is not in alignment with my plan or my goal. Problem is, most of you guys don't have a plan or a goal, and that's okay. That's one of the reasons we're here today, right? But the opposite is true. If that thought is in alignment with what I want, my goal, my whatever, it's like, come on into the party. Come on into this fertile soil and get planted. But most people have never thought about this. She was mentioning last time I spoke, there's a doctor, her name is Dr. Caroline Leaf, Leaf, like a tree, Leaf. And the video that I showed when I was speaking on mindset last time is to prove through this doctor that she's been able to prove that if you keep thinking about a thought, right? Some people call it meditating on a thought. You keep thinking about it, meditating it, keep thinking about it. I say chewing on it. Eventually, it physically becomes something in your brain. And she has the science that we showed. It looks like a tree branch, like roots. Right? That's why I give the example of that field. You're planting seeds. This thing's going to take root. How many of you have ever been freaked out, stressed, like about a bill or about something, right? It kept you up all night. Raise your hands. How many's ever experienced that, right? You just keep thinking about, okay, good. So you guys already know how to meditate. You were just meditating on something negative, right? So if we were to replace that thought with something positive, positive meaning your goal, that's what you want to do. It's just thinking about it constantly. How am I going to make it happen? Looking at it from different angles. So this is what I realized going through all of my stuff, is what you believe dictates what you do. At your core, at your, some books talk about your heart, right? Well, it was put on my heart to help you. It was put on my heart to give you $20, or it's just been on my heart to call so-and-so. I've realized that your heart is your subconscious. Your heart is your subconscious. And your subconscious, going back to that video that I was talking about that I played last time, where these roots go in, the way it works is what comes into your imagination will grow roots into your brain, which becomes part of you. And by meditating, right, over and over what you want, over and over, you're basically reprogramming your subconscious. The best way, the example that I give a lot is your subconscious is like my computer, my hard drive, right? My subconscious is going to do whatever it believes. So being the hard drive, if I were to plug in pornography and go to the web and type in pornography, my computer's going to show me pornography. It's not going to say, John, it's not my moral compass. It's going to say, John, you shouldn't be watching that. It's just going to do what it's told. It's going to do what it knows, right? Same thing, I could type in and put in QuickBooks. My computer's going to run QuickBooks. It's not going to say, hey, great job. You're going to be more efficient, right? It's going to be perfect for tax time. No, it just does what I put in. So whether you believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, what you see, what you listen to, who you hang out with, all that affects your life. And we're going to get into that a little bit as far as who you hang out with. And here's what I realized, because I always heard that term, birds of a feather flock together, and there's other sayings, right? And, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, but they're like, if you hang out with 4 losers, you're going to be the 5th. You hang out with 4 millionaires, you're going to be the 5th. Right? You hang out with 4 luxury agents, you're going to be the 5th. You hang out with 4 druggies, you're going to be the 5th. So it's, again, just taking inventory and stock of your life, like, who am I hanging out with? And it's not necessarily that you have to cut them off 100%, but maybe 99%. And what I mean by that is, if you have certain people that you hang out with all the time, maybe you just need to grow some distance between them. Because this is what I couldn't figure out. I'm like, how do they affect my life? And it all goes back to thoughts. Because whatever you all talk about, gossip, this, that person, life's so terrible, like insert whatever terrible thing you want. The conversation for you has actually planted thoughts and ideas in your brain and your mind that you don't really realize. So when you leave, you're still thinking about it. That night when you lay in bed, you're still thinking about it. The next day, you're still thinking about it, right? So that's how everything starts with your life, is in your imagination. An idea, a dream, a thought. The chairs we're sitting in, tables, carpet, everything started with a thought. I truly believe that thoughts go out because they're not always our own. I believe these thoughts come to us, right? Probably whoever the first person was that invented the chair, pretty sure there was other people that had thoughts to design that chair or what it looked like or whatever, but we're just like, I could never do that. Like, look at my bank account. I could never do that. Look at the color of my skin. I could never do that. My culture. I could never do that. I was raised by a single, right? Whatever the excuse is. Or there was one person that was crazy enough and said, I'll try it. That's a great idea. Let's go for it. So that's really where it all starts, is in our mind, the imagination. But there's so many times that as we grow up, it's usually someone that we look up to, a coach, pastor, mentor, parent, somebody that we look up to that squashes our dreams. And I think a lot of times they don't mean to. It's just their life hasn't amounted to anything and they can't comprehend, right? They don't have those thoughts and ideas. So let's go extreme just to prove my point. So all this craziness that happened last year with Israel and Palestine, we're not going to argue about politics or what side you're on. I heard so many people say, I cannot even imagine doing that. How could they do that? That was disgusting. Because you don't think that way. The same way a luxury agent, God, how can they sell 30 houses a year? Because you don't think that way. It truly starts with your thoughts. So that's why I'm having you guys write this stuff down, is I want you to go back and look at it, right? And then not only just look at it, if you're happy with your life, then keep doing what you're doing. But if you're not, that is a starting point for change. So what you believe dictates what you do. So what I want to do today is have you guys just really open your eyes, right? Become aware, because if you're not even aware or conscious of it, you can't change it. And so that's what we're going to do today, because again, what you believe dictates what you do. So for example, how many people, and please don't raise your hand, I don't want to embarrass anyone. I'll raise my hand because it pertains to me. How many have dated a toxic person that you're like, I will never, ever date a person like that? And who's the next person you date? Right? The other thing that's interesting about this principle, what you believe dictates what you do. So let's just say you believe you're only worth $45,000 a year, which is about the average, what the average agent makes a year, according to NAR. I think it's up to 50 now, but so let's say 50 grand. If you believe you're only worth 50 grand, you're not going to take the action or even try to do what it's going to take to be someone that makes 100 grand. Right? Most people that I help one-on-one, when they're open and they're honest with me, it's amazing how many people don't like themselves. It's amazing how many people have low self-esteem, right? And it usually boils down to trauma. Usually boils down to, like I said, a pastor, mentor, coach, someone, a family member that was just talking negative things, right? As a kid, when you were younger, it's like, oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. Maybe your uncle's like, you're a loser. Like, no one in the Peterson family has ever done that. No one has ever done this. No one has ever done that, right? And what happens is you hear it over and over and over. You start to believe it, not really realizing it. So then when something happens and you're just like, oh my gosh, there's an opportunity in real estate to make $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 as an agent. What's that next thought that comes? Yeah, not you. Where did that thought come from? Does that make sense? Because here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. If you do the work, you'll get rewarded. It's actually very simple. Again, you can go to Google, YouTube. What are the steps I need to do? Problem is you're not doing them. And again, that's what we're going to talk about. The reason why you're not doing them is because at your core, whether you realize it or not, you do not believe, one, that you can do it, and it usually has to do with your worth. There was and I've heard the story, I don't know if it's true, but it makes sense. There was, I think back in the 60s or 70s, they did like a social experiment where, this is back old school, right before social media, they actually had to post the ad in the newspaper. And so they post an ad in the newspaper for secretarial skills. And I think the starting pay for the first ad was like $5 an hour. And so they had a group of people send in or fax or whatever their email resumes. Then they waited a week. They ran the same exact ad and they said $10 an hour. They got a few of the same resumes from the beginning, but a whole different group of people. Then a week later, they did it at $15 an hour. Total different group of people. Why? Because there's people that looked at that and was like, oh man, I'm not worth $15 an hour. Like, what's going to be expected? It was the same exact job description, right? And so it just goes back to what you believe about yourself. If that person was like, oh yeah, no one in my family has ever made $15 an hour. Who am I to think? The beauty with real estate is if you're going to put in the work, you will be rewarded. I promise you. Some of my best clients that I coach, and I think I mentioned this last time I spoke, are either single moms or immigrants. And at first I couldn't figure it out. Like, man, they just do what I tell them to do. Everyone else wants to argue. Everyone else has an excuse. Right? I have agents when we have listings that are like, hey, can I do a showing? An open house for you? I'm like, yeah, sure. The morning of, hey, I'm sorry, I can't make it. And I'm a D. I'm very direct with them. I'm very clear. I'm like, if you tell me you're going to do it, you're going to do it. So for example, driving here today, we've planned this, Brad, for 2 months now, maybe, bud? For 2 months, I've never missed a speaking gig, ever. One, I love doing this. But two, I told someone I was going to be there. So just so you understand, grit is, I will make it happen. So say I was coming here and I had a blowout, right? I don't have time to change the tire. I would have called Uber. I will be here. I will do what I say I'm going to do. How many of you have that mindset? I can't tell you how many agents talk a good game. I finally got to the point where I just tell agents now, show me. Oh, John, I'm going to lead generate 15 hours this year. Oh, show me. Oh, I'm going to be a luxury agent. Show me. Like, talk is cheap. And I think as agents, a lot of times agents as an industry, not you individually in this room, but as an industry whole, we have a bad reputation. Why? Because people think we do about 20 minutes of work and get $15,000. And again, that's part of the expectation that's been set. So when you guys show up and you're like, oh crap, I got to work. I got to call people. I got to go through leads. I got to market. I got to advertise. I got to come to classes. Right? No one really tells you about all that kind of stuff. And so again, it just goes back to what you believe. Because here's the thing, your subconscious will sabotage and stop what you want to do. If you believe you're only worth $45,000 a year, and you're like, no, you know what? I want to be a luxury agent. Nothing can stop you. Because when these thoughts come to you, ladies and gentlemen, you have the power to keep them out of your mind. In fact, I speak back to them. So for example, if I want to be a luxury agent and you have that thought, have you ever noticed that the first thought is usually inspiration? Oh man, I want to be a luxury agent. I think that'd be cool. What immediately happens? A thought comes saying, yeah, right, you. Or whatever negative thought, right, that's stopping you. So fear may feel like a 600-pound gorilla standing in front of you, but there's really nothing in front of you. It's just a thought. It's just a suggestion. So some people are like, oh, people are crazy if they talk to their thoughts. Okay. I don't really care what people think anymore. I've always been that way growing up. It's been even more so after I've learned these principles that I'm teaching you guys today. So just know that you can speak to it. And it's not easy, right? It's like going to the gym. You start off with a 2.5-pound weight, then you build up to 5 pounds, 7 pounds, 10 pounds, right? Like, that's how it is. Like, you just have to keep fighting this thing and keep speaking to it. And eventually it will listen to you. Because what I've realized is that your will is extremely powerful. No one can stop you. Even from the spiritual realm, right? Nothing can stop you. So what happens is when you want to become a luxury agent, that is what you want. So when the thought, even your own subconscious, again, it's going to go up to stop you. When it comes up to stop you and be like, no, there's no way, that's when you speak to it and say, no. This is where the repetition comes in. This is what I want. I will become a luxury agent. And what happens with time, right? Some people say 21 days, some people 30 something, whatever it is. You just keep going until it changes. In Newsflash, you're always going to have those negative thoughts. They don't go away. So I'm teaching you today how to speak to those thoughts. So you can You can learn to control them. People tell me all the time, God, you're fearless. I want to get like you. Yes, I am fearless, but they think for whatever miracle reason that I don't have these thoughts anymore. These thoughts still come. I've just learned to deal with them in like 2 seconds, as opposed to all night or 3 hours or 30 minutes, right? When this thought comes to me, I've learned that I can speak to it and say, nope, and I just keep going. So it's very important that you guys learn that principle. It's pretty interesting. I do a lot of speaking and teaching. I do a seminar once a month on why you're born, right? What's your purpose? It has nothing to do with money. This is your true calling, why you're on this earth. And so anyways, I was doing some research, the difference between knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. I thought I knew the definition of knowledge, so I just looked it up. And it blew me away. It says the definition, right? And as you guys can see, this is Merriam-Webster. The definition is the fact or condition of knowing something with familiarity gained through experience or association. I was like, the experience jumped out at me because I always teach that learning is experiential. I could sit here and we could talk for 5 hours. You're going to retain a little bit of it and you're going to leave. But if you go through a transaction with me and you're dealing with that client that might be difficult, or even if it was an easy one, what happens is you're experiencing emotions along with this transaction. And what I've realized is when you have a memory, you stand up so everyone can see, when you have a memory, right, it's kind of easy to forget about it. But when you have a memory that's wrapped with emotion, it's like a fossil. It's like wet cement. It's imprinted in you. And if you don't believe me, if I talk to someone that has trauma, when we start talking about it, immediately their mind goes there. They're in that situation. They're experiencing, how is that possible? Because it's a fossil. There was emotion wrapped with it. Now again, this is also works for positive, right? If you have a positive experience, like I could ask you, hey, what's the best day of your life? You can go there, you can see what you were wearing, the people that were there, right? How is that possible? Because it's our mind. So just knowing that principle, it meant a lot to me about through experience, right? The other word there was association. So I thought that's kind of interesting. So I looked up association, and it was just the act of associating. I'm like, okay, great. So then I thought, well, I'll look up some synonyms for association. So partnership, collaboration, relationship. So I stopped at relationship, and I was like, that's interesting. Your circle. Who do you hang out with? Association. So here's what's even more interesting is part of the definition of association was number 4. The process of forming, right? We talked earlier about the roots, forming mental connections or bonds between sensations, ideas, and memories. So the people you're talking to, hanging out with, right? Because let's be real, if you're hanging out with people that just gossip about and talk about people all the time, that's what your ideas and thoughts are. If you're hanging out with multi-million-dollar investors, guess what kind of ideas they're talking about? Whole different topic, right? So now they're dropping knowledge, dropping ideas of how you can become an investor, how you can flip a property, how you can start an Airbnb or whatever, right? Or hang out with the other people that are just talking about people. But that number 4, I was like, forming mental connections. So who are you hanging with and what kind of mental connections are you forming? Are you forming mental connections that every time you guys get together and pop open a drink and start talking about people? Or are you hanging out with people that every time you pop open a drink, you guys are talking about how to make money, how to help people? Maybe you're hanging out with people that are tied to your true identity, your purpose, right? Something to think about. So my thing, to me, I call this the 3, 2, 1, let's go. And so actually, whatever your goal is, could be weight loss, could be 12 deals, 24 deals, 100 deals, whatever. You want to get a team, whatever your goal is. So before I get too deep on this, I'm going to have Brad come up and talk because it's going to be exactly with this. So what we're going to do is, let's just say hypothetically it was 24 houses that you want to close this year, right? You have 2 paths. Your path, so for the path on the left, let's say the left side, the path would be lead generation. So what 3 action items, this is stuff you're going to physically do every day, are you going to do for lead generation to be successful? And then the second path, let's just open it up. What do you guys think, aside from lead generation, What is another path, another road that's going to get you to 24 houses that you need to do this year? Go for it. Marketing, good. What else? Networking, education, sharpening your negotiation skills, training, events. How do you think I pick up coaching clients? By doing this, right? Everyone wants to email and text nowadays, and that's cool. Do you? I love meeting people. I get a vibe off of people. And there's just something about meeting someone eye to eye and shaking their hand as opposed to a text. And you know why? Because communication. 55% is body language, 38% is tone, and only 7% is word or text. So now you know why text messages are so, like, they could take it any which way. It's so easy to get miscommunication. So anyways, with that said, be kind of thinking about that. Brad, if you want to come up, brother.